Hey guys, it's a cold, icy, grungy day here in the Ozarks. And we got like 4 inches of rain the last 2 days, and then the cold front came through and switched over to freezing rain and sleet, and it's pretty nasty outside today. So tomorrow's supposed to be 45 again, so it'll be time to go out. Tomorrow is Sunday, so it'll be time to go out and try to get my line halfway back in order for about another week, and then I'll be off a week, so then I'm going to be completely moving it to some brand new properties that I've never actually trapped on. So it's always fun when you're going to brand new places that you've never trapped on, and Steve and I'll be going out and hitting it for about 8 days straight, and so that should be a really good time. But today what I wanted to talk to you about is coyotes and cows. So I've got several questions about trapping around cows, and if you do very much trapping, especially here in the Ozarks, you're going to trap around cows. Unlike crop areas in like northern Missouri and other parts of the Midwest, we don't have a lot of crops in the Ozarks because the ground is just not conducive to it. You have some, but not a ton. What you normally will have is like small little food plots or hay fields and things like that, but you're not going to have a lot of crops, so to speak. So you mostly have cattle. That's how the farmers are sustaining themselves, is through cattle. So probably 90 to 95% of the land that I trap on has got cattle on it. It's private land, it's got cattle. In fact, I only know of two people that I have permission to trap on that don't have cattle on their land, and those guys are just ate up with deer hunting. One guy's only got about 200 acres, and another guy's got about the same, 150, 200 acres. And they have food plots, and they don't have any cattle on that land. It's just strictly deer hunting. Other than that, every other piece of property I have, it's got cattle on it. And then of course I trap a little bit on the government, only in select areas. And then those places don't have cattle. So consequently, I'm constantly dealing with cattle. So what have I learned over the years of trapping around cattle? The first thing I've learned over the years is that cows can be a real pain in the earth, and if you can trap around, or can trap without cattle around, fantastic. It's going to make your life easier for sure. But can you trap around cattle? Of course you can. In fact, I think there's kind of this weird relationship, at least around here sometimes, between cattle and coyotes. Will coyotes take calves sometimes? They will sometimes. But what I see coyotes do more than that is follow mama cows around, and it's like almost like they're a house dog or a farm dog, and they know, you just killed a deer, you're gonna have scraps left over or whatever. Coyotes are that way when it comes to calving, January, February, March calving. They'll almost follow these cows around and just wait for those calves. Not necessarily to kill all the calves, because they obviously don't do that. They kill some maybe, but not all. But what they do go after is that afterbirth. That's the first thing they go after. And the second thing they go after around here is what they call mother's milk. And that is that first week or so that calf is nursing off that mother. It's got all those specific things in that milk that cow really needs to booster its immune system and to really get that head start. And a lot of times what you see in these young calves is they'll almost have, they'll have a real loose stool, almost like a scour, kind of like, so to speak. And the farmers all call that mother's milk. And I've actually seen this. I've had tons of farmers tell me about this, but I've actually seen it myself, where those coyotes will actually follow those little baby calves around, not necessarily to kill them, but when they use the bathroom, so to speak, they'll eat that mother's milk in that first week because it's got all this nutrition and stuff in it. So again, coyotes are super adaptive. They'll go after the afterbirth. They'll go after the mother's milk, just like they learn in the summertime, which I've seen this as well. I'm sure most of you have too. These farmers go out in these hay fields, are making that first cut of the season on a hay field, or maybe they're whatever, brush hogging a place that they brush hog every year pretty consistently. I've seen as many as 3 or 4 coyotes come out and kind of basically follow that farmer around as he's cutting hay and eating those rats and mice and things that they can get to now much easier through that hay cutting. I've seen it myself when I've been even just brush hogging around my place, and you see all, you know, you got a bunch of thick stuff that you haven't taken care of for a while, and it's 3-4 feet tall and it's thick, and you're brush hogging that, and you see all those mice and stuff that are bouncing out of it. And I've seen coyotes come in there and get those things. So coyotes learn, they learn really, really quickly. So how can we trap around cattle if we have to, which most of us are gonna have to? A couple different ways we can do that. The two things that I have noticed over the years is that farmers have one or two things going in the wintertime when it's trapping season. Either they've got grass, at which the cows are eating grass, and that grass is anywhere from 6 to 10 inches tall, and maybe they've got that grass because they've, you know, kept those cattle out of certain fields and let that grass grow through the fall, and then in the winter they move those cows from pasture to pasture to pasture, let them eat off a certain area. So they've got grass, or they don't have grass, and they've just eaten it all down through the fall and early winter, and the farmer is completely feeding them hay, and they got nothing else other than hay and whatever else the farmer feeds them. If that's the case, it's much easier to trap. If you have cows that are just getting fed hay all the time, around here it's, you know, round bales, big round bales, much easier to trap. For example, I'm currently trapping on this farm that's got a lot of nice bottomland along this nice creek. And those cows, the farmer's gonna feed in those bottomlands. He's just not gonna drive up on the steep hillsides, up on the ridges, plus most of those have got trees on them. So he's feeding in these bottoms, and those cows will stay in that bottom. They will stay down there by that creek because they got water. They will stay down there on that bottom because that farmer is moving from field to field, down on that bottom, moving, you know, today he feeds in this field, tomorrow he feeds in this little field, the next day he feeds in this little field, and he's got 5 or 6 fields in that bottom he's gonna feed in, and he just rotates it around so not one field is getting completely, just totally out of control mud-wise, and he's just moving it around. Plus that's farmers, that way it's moving that cow under around for the spring for his grass and things. So he's moving that around as he's feeding, and those cows will follow him in those bottoms where he's feeding. And they'll feed, they'll stay in those bottoms, they'll have water in those bottoms, and if the weather is bad, they'll come up out of that bottom a little bit and get into that first row of cedar trees, usually what they look for to get out of the wind and the weather, and that's it. They're not moving anywhere else. They're staying in that bottom because it's got everything they need. It's got hay, it's got water, it's got cover. That's all those cows need, and that's where they're staying. So this is a small area of his farm, so the rest of his farm is pretty much cattle free. So if you find those areas like that where he's feeding in certain areas, that's easy because then you can trap on the whole rest of the farm, not have to worry about the cattle being there, and then you get a pretty good idea in those areas where he is feeding where those cattle are, from the tracks that they're leaving, where they're churning up the ground, where they're bedding down. You'll be able to see all that, and you'll know, okay, the cattle are staying here, the cattle are staying here, the cattle are staying here. And then you can actually set traps around those areas in those bottoms, I do, where you can see that the cattle aren't moving to. They're using these cattle paths, but they're not really using this area, or they're bedding here, or they're standing here, or they're going back and forth from the creek here. You kind of get an idea of where they're moving to, and then the areas that they're not really moving in very much, you can put traps in. Will you every now and then have a cow mess with your set at that point? Yeah, usually calves that are smelling your set and they're interested and they get over there stomping around and end up stepping on it and springing it or whatever. That'll happen, and you have to know that going in. You're going to set around those cattle. That's just going to be part of it. But the rest of the farm is carte blanche, and then you can work on setting those areas. The next option is, again, we talked about a place that the farmer just has grass. He's got grass in there, and those cows are allowed to move around anywhere in that particular part of that farm because there's grass there. The cattle will again stay in those areas where there's grass, and they'll move all over the place. Much more difficult to trap because you can't tell where they're going to be all the time, and they're just going to continue to move around in that grass area as they feed. So they'll be all over the place versus just in defined areas, which makes it much more complicated to trap in those areas. Okay, so here's a perfect example of, this is a property where, at least down here in these bottoms, there's not much grass left. It's almost January and there's just not much grass left. You can see these cows They're stacking up down here, just waiting for the farmer to show up with hay. It's been windy the last couple days, and they'll get up in those cedars and try to get out of the wind. But now they come out here this morning, the wind's died down a bit, they know it's time to get fed. And the farmer's gonna be showing up soon with hay. He'll be using one of these bottom fields down here. There's 4 or 5 that stretch along the bottom of this creek. And these cows are pretty much gonna stay in this bottom. They've got the creek right here. So they got water, they're gonna have, this is where their hay is gonna be. They can get up out of the wind in those cedars. They're pretty much just gonna stay here. They're not gonna wander around the rest of the property, which means the rest of the property is pretty much open as far as keeping the cows out of traps. But if you're gonna trap down here in this bottom, like along this little 2-track right here along the creek, you're gonna obviously get into cow problems. That doesn't mean you still can't put traps here, but you just gotta recognize that the cows are gonna be down here most of the time, and they might get into them from time to time, especially these calves. They seem like they're super curious, and they'll get into them. And like right now, with the cows all watching me, if I were to set a trap right here, within 10 minutes, they'd be over here, they'd be sniffing around it, they'd set it off. So if you're gonna set in these bottoms, wait until the cows go to a different field and they're eating hay and they're not paying attention, then set your trap down here along the 2-track along the creek if that's what you want to do. So they don't know where it is, they got to find it. They're not super active this time of year. They're just drinking, they're eating, and they're staying out of the wind and the snow. That's about it. So the cows are eating hay now. Here, this is the exact spot that I shot some film at yesterday just to show you. So the farmer's coming here, he's feeding hay. He sometimes will feed a second time, depending on what the weather's like and whatever. So, but right now is a good time. I'm just checking traps and trying to put in a few sets to get this line in. And you can see it's a great time now to be setting traps. The cows are out of the way. They're not messing with me. And you can see they did not move very far from where they were last night because they know it's going to be in one of these 3 or 4 fields here in this bottom along the creek. So they're not going to move. They're going to pretty much stay in these bottoms. They got water, they got hay, they got salt blocks, they got minerals, and then they've got cedar trees right up in there and right up over in there where when the weather gets bad they can get up underneath them cedars. So that enables me to be able to trap the rest of this property and not really have to worry about the cows and not really have to deal with them because they're just not going to go anywhere else. But again, you know, if you were to put traps like right here, for example, you got the creek over here, you got a fence, you got this little 2-track that you can kind of see along the edge here. Are there cows running along this? I'm sure there are, and I can put traps in here, and you can put traps in here, and you can catch coyotes, because if you have cows, you have coyotes. And you can see, like with all these little calves in here, these cows will be following those calves around, eating that, you know, calf manure. They call it mother's milk. It's kind of this yellow stuff. It's got all that nutrients in the first, you know, week or 2 that those calves are born. Cows will eat that. They'll obviously go after afterbirth and things like that. So you can put traps in here, but you're gonna get a mess with cows sometimes. So just understand, you may come out here and have them trip 2 or 3 days in a row that the cows got in, or you may come out here and catch a coyote. You just don't know, but it's gonna pretty good opportunity for the cows to get in if you're gonna trap right here when you know these cows are not gonna go very far. So it's one of the things that you just need to consider when you're putting your traps in is, you know, where you're going to put them at, where the cow's going to be. Are they going to be moving around, or are they going to be relatively stationary and just a segment of that property? So whether we're in an area that the cows are eating hay or that they're roaming all around and eating grass that's been left there from the fall, what about sets? I mean, that's a question that I'd be asking. Is there specific sets that I can use to keep the cows out, or things that I can do to the sets? And honestly, I don't really have an answer to that. Matt Jones talks about doing kind of a post hole set where you dig a hole and you put the bait in the bottom of the hole, cover it up with some dirt, and then you put a trap on top of that, cover that up with dirt, And then the cows, even if they smell it, they won't step down in the hole. But the coyotes have to step down in the hole in order to get the bait. I never tried that. I guess that would kind of work. Kind of like a more intense step down kind of like set, I guess. I've heard other people talking about building like, fencing or something around where you have a trap at, like put a couple pieces of wire here, wire there. Never tried that either. Just seemed like, coyotes are phobic enough. To me, I just thought, if you're building all this stuff around there and then you're putting a set in there, yeah, maybe that would work. I don't know. If somebody out there has tried that and it's worked, let me know. I just don't know that you can catch large numbers of coyotes using that kind of stuff. So what have I done? I've done several different things. I've tried using different sets like T-bone sets or dirt hole sets or flat sets or whatever. Obviously I'm not setting a trail set because the cows are going to be like walking on the trail. And honestly, I don't know that there's any set that I see that the cows are less likely to get into than another. And I've even tried different lures, and the one thing that I have seen from just looking at my spreadsheet, and I've actually wrote in my spreadsheet in places, cow got in the set, reset it, cow got in the set, reset it, cow got in the set, reset it. Because I really wanted to see, am I still catching critters after I had to reset the thing 3 days in a row because cows got in it? And the answer to that is yes, I have actually caught numerous coyotes doing that. But I look at the sense that I'm using, and it seems to me that if you're using something that's much more powerful, especially something that is skunky, like a call lure, it seems like the cows get into those sets more often than if you're using more curiosity lures or lures that don't have as much punch to them. Now maybe that's because a cow's nose is just not as good as a coyote's nose. I'm sure that's the case, but I don't know how good a cow's nose is. Is a cow's nose, I'm assuming it's better than ours, but I don't know. I have no idea what a cow's nose is good at or not good at. But I have seen that the more powerful lures, they seem to get into them more. The less powerful lures, they still get into, but just not as much. I've also seen stuff saying that if you put the trap next to like the cattle trail, that the cows don't have to go over there to see it, and they can just stay on the trail. They can kind of lean over, smell it, be curious about it, blow snot on it, whatever they're going to do, and they don't have to get off the trail, and then they'll be less likely to step on your set and spring the trap. I tried that, they still sprung the trap. I didn't really notice any difference, and plus I don't always want to set the trap right next to the cattle trail. Sometimes you might want to, but what if I want to be a little bit over here, a little bit over there? So the answer to that question, I don't know that there's any set out there that you can do to keep, or anything that you can do to fence it off to keep the cows out of it and still catch critters. I think you just have to learn to live with it, recognize that you're going to lose some of your sets because cows are going to get in them, and you're going to have to remake them, and not be frustrated if you have to do it. Although I tell you what, I had a brand new location earlier this year, and it was a crossover between two fields. Cows set off that trap every single day. I think I was only on that property for about a week, and I never did catch anything there. One day I caught a coon there in a flat set. Everything else, I had a T-bone there as well, and that T-bone was, that trap was set off every single day for a week straight. And that was pretty frustrating because I could see the cow tracks running through there. So I think in that respect, honestly, what I would do next time, because I plan on going back there this next year because it's a good piece of property, I think I'm just going to put more traps in there. I mean, if you put 3 or 4 or 5 traps in that area, surely you got some of them that are going to be working all the time. Cows are not going to get into them. And it's a really good crossover, okay. So you put a couple I had 2 traps in there. You're going to always probably put 2, maybe 3 anyway. What's the difference between adding another couple? So I would probably do that if I had a really good area and I knew I had cows there. So so that's kind of it on cattle. If you have something else that I'm missing, put it in the comments below.
let me know how you're fighting the cows. And 2 weeks left. Hopefully it's better than here in the Ozarks. Right now, everything out there is an absolute mud hole. I went to some new land today. Couldn't even drive out in there probably without sinking in 10 inches in a pickup truck at least. So it's pretty grungy out there. Hopefully it dries out pretty quick. So talk to you guys soon.